Trish TV here. Trish Jenkins. I have got a wonderful guest with me today, Diane Diresta, and we are going to talk about finding your voice so that you actually get heard and you're not still talking like a teenager and fumbling around with your words. That this is going to be really, really helpful, not just for doing a presentation, but for asking for what you need and leaning in and giving of your contribution to your workplace. So we will meet Diane right after this. The strongest prison bars are in your head. Leaders and teams, it's time for a jailbreak. Well, hello and welcome back. Hang on, I'm getting a bit of feedback there, am I? There we go, that's better. Diane, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, and thank you for having me, Trish. I love your opening video. I work with leaders, both men and women, but I especially love working with women who want to show up powerfully so that they're more confident, clear, and influential. And so what does that mean? How do I show up? Well, I show up either on a stage speaking or one-on-one with executive speech coaching, or in group workshops and trainings, or doing media training. So I have been in business for over 20 years, and I work a lot with corporations, companies, and individuals to help them, as you said, find their voice. Because there are a lot of people who have a lot of good information. They are very capable. They're very well thought of, but for some reason, they don't present themselves well. So I show them how to show up powerfully. And one of the other ways I do that is with my book, Knockout Presentations.
Right. Fantastic. Now, tell me, Diane, what are people doing wrong? What is it that they're in the workplace and they're not showing up well? What is with that?
Well, what I've discovered about executive presence, and by the way, you don't have to be a C-suite executive to have executive presence. What I've discovered is those who have it are fully aligned with their visual, vocal, and verbal, meaning their body language, their tone of voice, and their words are all giving off one seamless message. So what often happens is if one of these goes out of sync, now the listener, the audience is confused because it's a double message. And so then body language becomes the default. But let me just give you an example. The first question I ask people is, how are you showing up? How do you take a seat at the table? Literally. So for example, if you're somebody who comes in and you sit on the sidelines, it's going to be hard for you to be heard and taken seriously. You're making yourself invisible. So take a seat where you're going to be visible. Sit next to the power players if that's permissible. Then how do you use your posture? Your body speaks a language. Have you ever been in a room where you just have this vibe about someone and don't mess with them, or they're really confident? They have this aura about them. And then there are others who seem to shrink. So the first thing is I show people how to use their body and how to take a seat at the table. So would you like to see one of the grounding positions that I show people?
Yes, okay. I would.
This is something anybody can do. Feet flat on the floor, lean in at a 15-degree angle, and then put both hands on the table. So you can see here, my hands are on the table. So notice that I'm leaning forward, I'm sitting up straight, and I'm looking directly at the listener. This is a grounding position. And what often happens is people don't know what to do in the beginning. They're fidgeting, they're trying to get their balance. Get into your grounding position, because right away you're going to look confident. If you look confident, people will think you're confident. So it doesn't matter how you're feeling inside, because you are now wearing the uniform of confidence.
I love it. I love it. And I love what you said. You said sit close to power in a meeting if you can, as close as you can, and lean forward. But I also jotted down, because I jotted down, I love, love, love this. You don't have to be an executive to bring an executive presence And you've just given some tips. Like we're only we're 5 minutes in, and you've just given us. And this is particularly good for people who have not been in the workplace very long. Maybe they're in their 20s, and they're thinking, how do you show up and look confident? You'll be confident, and it actually does. The grounding of the feet and the hands and the posture. It actually does something to your brain too and your emotions that settles you, doesn't it?
Absolutely. There's always a mind-body connection that I tell people about. So if you're getting into a confident position, that's sending a message to the brain. And if you do something often enough, you actually form a new neural pathway. So then it becomes a habit. You come in, you take a seat at the table, you're grounded. And people look at you as someone who has authority, somebody who is a leader, someone who's confident.
That's so good. And if you're enjoying this, feel free to share it on Facebook and tag people who you think might be interested in this. And especially those who might be in the workplace and they might be fairly new to the workplace and they want to be listened to and show up. And so I love that you do the executive coaching as well. But my goodness, we've got a whole generation of people entering the workplace as the baby boomers exit. And they're not quite sure how to make themselves heard and have that confidence. I love that.
It's harder today because there were certain standards and rules that you were expected to follow, and then things got lax, and sometimes everything goes or nothing goes. So people are confused at every generational level, but especially if you're new in the workplace, you're trying to figure out, how is this different? How do I navigate? So the first thing you have to realize is the culture. Every company is different. And what is the culture? In some cultures, like Facebook, probably you're wearing hoodies, you're wearing something very casual. In fact, I actually gave a talk to the women of Amazon, and I was told that, don't say a lot about attire, because we don't do that here. We don't tell people how to dress. So it's a learning curve for me too. It's a new world. But when you have an idea of the culture, then you know how to fit in, or if you are a fit. So if you're new or if you're seasoned, when you're in a company, if you feel like you're always pushing and you're uncomfortable, then it may not be the right fit. Go someplace else. But know what the culture is, and then you need to be part of it.
You do. And that makes me think about the concept of diversity, because companies are now needing to accommodate diversity.
Yes.
And some companies see that as a nuisance, as an inconvenience, that it's something, oh gosh, we've got it. But the companies that are doing well are actually seeing it as an asset, because you can, by embracing diversity, you are tapping into different types of people and the way they do things and their talent. So,
Absolutely.
The studies that show that where there are more women on the boards and where there are more women in C-suite, those companies do better.
Absolutely.
Statistically, they just do, because you don't want to have a meeting where all of the decision makers are just like you.
Exactly. But here's the thing that people need to know, especially women. You still need to communicate in the culture of the company. So I've had executive women who were having difficulty, one woman especially, because she was so bright and she was so good at what she did. And now she was a CEO of a spin-off company, and she was dealing directly with the board of directors. Well, guess what? Her very effusive style was not working for her. And so she had to learn a new way to show up that they would respect, that would make her credible. So she wasn't changing who she was, but she had to learn to speak a different language. So when you talk about finding your voice, Trish, that's a part of it. It's all right, how do these people receive information? What kind of behavior do they respect and admire? And then you need to be able to communicate in that way. So again, it's diversity. At first, people give me pushback, like, I want to be authentic. That's not me. Excuse me. Do you speak the same way to your child that you do to your husband? No. Well, do you speak the same way to your husband as you do to the CEO? No. Yes. So that means you're speaking a different language. You're flexing. So the best communicators, the more successful people in the workplace are flexible.
That's so good. And, it puts me in mind of the, there are so many personality assessments out there, and even people's listening styles are different. You know,
Mhm.
where you're in a culture where there's that style of, look, just get to the point.
Right.
Just give me the dot points. That's you've got to accommodate that person because you want them to be able to understand. But if you're talking to someone who is a detailed person, and it might be in an area of safety
Mhm.
where you have got to be detailed and you've got to cross your T's and dot your I's, you don't want to come across as or you could accidentally come across as careless.
Yeah, and you don't want to be too sketchy. And in that case, you need to be very detailed. But again, it has to do with your audience. So I often
Correct.
tell people, are you talking to the actual implementers? Then you need to be detailed. But if
Yeah.
you're talking to senior managers, you're going to lose credibility in 2 seconds if you do that. You've got to give them the big picture. I worked with a newly appointed CFO, and he was ready for promotion, except he wasn't succeeding. And the reason was when he would talk to the partners, he would show them the Excel sheet and he'd go through every number. Their eyes were rolling in their heads. So he had to learn how to talk at a 30,000-foot level. That's what they want.
Right. And one of the things that you do talk about, and you've given me some dot points here, is if you're someone who is that spreadsheet person, stories get things across, get what you want to say
Mm.
more than ever. And that was something that I noticed when I was researching you. And talk to me about stories.
Well, I say that great speakers tell facts and they wrap them in stories. Stories are the most potent, powerful way of communication, and it's from primitive times before we had written language. And so what you want to do in the business world is you want to tell shorter stories. So
Right.
if you're, let's say, a finance person, then your job is to tell the story of the numbers, not to identify every number, because I can read this Excel sheet the same way you can. If you're going to recite numbers, just give it to me and I'll read it. All right, so what's the story? You bring value because you can connect the dots in a way that I can't. So stories are really important.
Yeah, short stories, only what they need to know. Yeah, I
Not
love that
everything they
point.
know. And I say that all the time. I say to audiences, small and large, don't tell them everything you know. Tell them only what they need to know, because it sounds counterintuitive. If I can tell them everything, they'll be so much more enriched. No, they'll be so confused. Keep it simple. What's important and relevant, tell them that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And do it in a way that is confident and leaning in and from your posture. And I love a saying of yours that I've got here that relate. And even actually, you can probably tell us if you're not sitting. If you're not sitting, how do you have that same confident attitude when you're standing? Because you like to see your power spaces from your waist to your face. I
Yes.
love. So what does that look like? We'll pretend that you're standing. What would you? How does that look?
Well, just like you have a grounding position when you're sitting, your grounding position is when you're standing. So put your feet shoulder width apart.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have them together. It looks stiff and narrow. And ground yourself, anchor yourself so that you're not swaying. Stay in one place, bring them into you. So here's the tip for your opening line: do not move, walk, or pace. Stay in one place, bring them into you. Once you have started your opening and you're in the body of your talk or your message, now you can move, but you want to be purposeful. So if you go to my YouTube channel, Diane Diresta youtube.com/Diane Diresta, I have a very old early video called Walk, Stop, Talk. And that's the standard. In other words, take a few steps as you segue, plant yourself, and then talk for a while. Changing the subject, take a few steps, anchor yourself, and talk for a while. And that's how you ground, and that's how you bring an audience into you. But to your point, your power space is from your waist to your face. So what does that mean? Get your gestures up above the waist as soon as possible. Hands that are below the waist make you look tentative. When you clasp them down here, they look tentative. So get your hands up. Now, a lot of times people don't know what to do with their hands. So there's simple things. You can count off. There are 3 areas, A, B, and C. That's much more powerful than standing stiffly. Or let's contrast last year with this year. So you can see there are very simple gestures. I'm Italian, they come naturally to me, but you don't have to be. You can learn how to use gestures. The most important thing, Trish, get involved in your message, because when you're involved, your hands are going to move naturally.
Right. Get involved in your message. I love that. I love that, because often if we don't know what to do with our hands, we'll flap around and we will default into poses that are what we used to do. And I think women in particular can get into that because they're a bit nervous and they're wanting something, they're wanting to persuade, they're wanting to entreat, they're wanting something from someone, perhaps a supervisor. They can default into a submissive pose and do the head tilt and, I really think, and almost like either a whiny nagging, which is, that's an exaggeration, but there can be those subtle body language submitted, not assertive, not confident, without being aggressive postures.
I talk to women. I talked to women's groups about how women can sabotage themselves unknowingly by some of the ways that they show up. So I want to pick up on what you said about the head tilt. Now, this is a listening posture. I'm listening. My ear is cocked to one side, but it's weakness. Here's what anthropologists tell us. When an animal surrenders in the wild, they expose their neck. So subliminally, your audience, your listener, is perceiving weakness. They don't know it consciously, but they're picking up on it. And you're helping them when you do the head tilt. So grounding position, head forward and straight. That's, again, these are little tweaks. Nobody needs to do a big makeover, but by making these little changes, the little steps have tremendous impact. Now, in addition to your head, another thing that we hear a lot is up talk. Now, up talk is a rising inflection. It sounds like I'm asking a question. I'm really making a statement. Now, if you talk like that, you're going to sound tentative. Now, I'll only talk about US English because I know Australian and British is a little bit different. In US English, when you make a declaration, your voice comes down. Today is Friday. But when you're asking a question, is today Friday? Your voice goes up. So the problem is using the wrong intonation. So if your intention is to make a declaration, make sure your voice comes down at the end of a sentence. You will sound authoritative.
That's true. And, another thing I've heard women do, well, not just women, this is not just a women thing, is they're so passionate and adamant about what they're saying. Like they might be giving a presentation or they might be preaching. And it's almost like all they ever do is make these declaratory statements because, and sometimes they'll do the wagging of the finger because and that's the other end of the spectrum, is that that's over and it's almost based in a fear of, I really have to push this home because I think you might be resisting me. So talk to us about that.
You have to be careful, male or female. Finger pointing is accusatory. So I often say, use an open-handed gesture, an open palm. Refer to someone like this instead of this. But yes, that pounding on someone is usually out of nervousness. I find that if someone is being resistant, instead of trying to be more forceful, it's better to ask questions. Enroll them, engage them, ask them. Well, how do you mean? We'll say more. Well, how would that impact? If we did this, what would happen here? What if we did this and that? Ask questions. You want to know how they're wired and what they're thinking, because they will tell you the secret to influencing them. And also the other part is mirroring and matching people. They will tend to have a greater rapport if you are like them. So if they're very laid back and you say, we must do this, this is it, it's a mismatch. So you bring your voice down, you pull back a little bit, you slow your energy. So use your powers of observation and be curious rather than being intimidated. Be curious and see how they're responding and try to respond in a way that is similar to their demeanor, so to speak.
I love that.
So match them where they are, meet them where they are.
Yeah, it's so good. And not everybody is a public speaker. Not everyone does presentations, but more and more people are doing video online. They're doing TikToks, they're doing, Facebook and that sort of thing. And so you do have opportunity to go back and look at yourself. People, I hate seeing myself on video. Like, I hate hearing my voice. But and if you are someone who presents regularly, one of the things that I would do in growing my professional presence is I would watch my videos, and sometimes I would turn the sound off. And then sometimes I would only be listening for the sound, because I've been noticing this lately that sometimes people, they will just have the same pitching, the same tone all the way through. It can be, and I've seen this with some, because my background is church, but it's the Pentecostal type woohoo sort of church. They're really passionate. It can, if you are shouty all the way through, you actually lose the power of the modulation. So it's worthwhile listening for, and say, oh no, that's not preaching. You got to preach it. And I was like, well, do you want to preach or do you want to communicate and get your message across? So I would even recommend, if you are in ministry, to talk to Diane about perhaps some coaching on your presentation. Have a look. What I will do at the end of this video is, in the notes, I'm going to put down a number of the points that Diane has. And also I'm going to share Diane's website so that you can go to it. She has, let's do that now, Diane. I'm going to share, hang on, let me just bring up your website. There it is. There.
What you said was so true. People think, well, if I'm loud, that's good. But anything that's the same will cause people to disengage. So it's really important. The brain turns on when there's change. So modulate, soft, get louder, slow it, get fast.
And it's right. Combined with what you said earlier at the very start, when you said center yourself, don't be moving when you start speaking. And quite often I'll see people presenting and they're pacing up and down and up and down. It's like, no, when you've got a good point to make, be still. So I want to encourage not just speakers, but also, and if you're in the workplace, but particularly if you're in ministry and you really want to, if your message is that important, you can rely on the Holy Spirit, but you can distract people. You can distract people from what the Holy Spirit's wanting to do by your irritating behavior on the platform. Seriously. So I would recommend, here we go. Now, this is diresta.com, diresta.com. And you have got a book. I'm going to flick to the book. Knockout presentation. So you can go with a book, or let's scroll down, because I believe I've got two screens going.
And the book is in softcover and Kindle.
Great. Yes, Kindle, which is really good because that makes it an instant access. So we've got some demos for you. Executives and leaders, that includes ministry. You work with ministry, don't you, Diane?
Anybody who needs to present.
Great. And you have a free audio course download.
Yes, it's called Seven Deadly Mistakes Speakers Make and How to Avoid Them for Maximum Success. So it's a series of 7 emails that come into your desktop, and all you need to do is put your email in there and you will be signed up, and you'll also get a copy of my monthly e-zine that has tips, articles, videos.
Fantastic. I highly recommend it if you would like to get better at communicating. So you are a certified virtual presenter. I won't go into too much detail there and distract everyone. The most important thing is that you know where to find Diane's website and her free audio course download. Is that, and also, in fact, I'll put it in right here. .com. Okay, there's all my personal. I probably should have had that prepared so that you don't have to look at all my personal notes there.
If you're not speaking with power and
content,
that goes right on.
Yep. So this is Diane Diresta's YouTube channel. So she has got lots of great things for you to explore.
Oh, right up there. See on that. Keep going. Scroll it up. There's one that. Stop it right there. Third one is about walk, stop, talk. I believe that's how to ground your energy so you don't pace. And the one on the end, I believe, is about using gestures.
Fantastic. Well, we won't play those now because I want people to go there and have a look at those, and also to sign up for your newsletter, because it is absolutely worthwhile. These,
Thank you.
These simple tips, look, every Sunday I'm somewhere listening to somebody, whether it's my own church or somewhere else or online, lots of things. And there's so much information out there, so many experts with so many great things to help people with. And if you're listening to this, you might be an expert who really wants to help people. Do yourself a favor and get good at the things that other people notice that you don't, so that you can do them well. And if you're in the workplace, and particularly, I've got a real heart for people in their 20s in the workplace, the millennials and the Gen Zs or Gen Zs coming through, mainly because I have 3 of them. I've got 3 daughters in that position. And they talk to me about, what do I do when, the supervisor said this, and how do I come back with that? And so, they're fortunate enough to have 2 parents who've been around and actually have some wisdom there. But you want to be constantly learning and growing, because you want your voice heard. Now, everybody else's voice is legitimate as well, because you want to be good at listening. But when you're transitioning from how you talk with your mates and when you're young to talking with people who have authority, you're going to develop your own gravitas and ability to communicate in a way so that you can have a career path that takes you forward. So it's really important to be able to communicate well, and not like a teenage girl anymore, or a young fella with with a silly head on his shoulders and arrogant. You want to be able to communicate for the purpose of what you're there for.
Communication is the most important business, workplace, and life skill. I'm not the first to say it. I believe Warren Buffett, the financier, has said that. So many different people. And you can't be without the skill. Soft skills are even more important now as we become more and more technological, because we have not grown up with them. We have been dependent on technology, and I'm talking about certain younger generations especially. So we really need to invest time into developing our soft skills and our communication.
That's right. That's exactly right. So look, Diane, it has been an absolute pleasure. It's just been tip after tip after tip after tip that we could just put a list of dot points to help people. So I will put those in the text that goes with these videos afterwards. But in the meantime, sign up for Diane's speaking program, her tips, and really learn from her. And if you are an organization that is looking for someone who can come in and help their people to improve the way they present, it might be how they do a sales presentation, or if they're training their staff, their teams, then Diane is someone that you can engage to do that, either live or virtually. If you happen to be in Australia, it might be virtual, but that's the world that we live in now.
Right.
So,
and I want to leave your listeners with this thought. Gifted speakers are born, but effective speakers are made. Anybody here can be an effective public speaker. And guess what? It's all public speaking.
Wow.
And everybody can be effective. It's just learning the skills. It's having the right mindset and the skill set.
Gifted speakers are born.
Effective speakers are made. It's learned behavior. Learned.
That is just so great.
Isn't that empowering to know that?
It's so good. Diane Diresta, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you, Trish. I enjoyed it.